Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joined alongside my co-host once again, Evan Davis, and it has come down to the final four. The MLB season has come down to four teams as we enter the championship series for both the American League and National League. We have a lot to break down this week. Obviously, the matchups between the Yankees and Guardians in the American League and the Dodgers and Mets in the National League. But first, I feel like we have to recap the two game fives from this weekend, Evan, and I want to ask you, what were your thoughts going through your mind before, during, and after game five between the Dodgers and Padres as a Dodgers fan?
Oh God. I mean, before game five, I was on team don't start Yamamoto just because of his history against the Padres. He had a 13 ERA in 9 innings pitched going into that game. And then during the game, I was just like thinking how lucky Yamamoto and the Dodgers were just to get five scoreless innings because the Padres had hit seven balls over 100 miles an hour off Yamamoto. And thankfully, none of them went out of the ballpark or none of them resulted in big hits. And I mean, Machado hit 730 feet of fly balls that found the glove of Mookie Betts. Legit, like two identical swings in two identical spots. He just needed a bit more mustard on it. But and then going up against Hugh Darvish, who has owned the Dodgers his entire career. His ERA, even after the loss, is 1.59 against LA, which is just ridiculous. The Dodgers were owned that entire game by him. They just happened to capitalize on two mistakes, the inside fastball and the sinker to both Hernandez. Uh, and that ended up being the difference. But what gets lost, but maybe might not, is just the Dodgers bullpen in this final two games, and even Yamamoto, 24 innings without allowing a run against the Padres. After that 6-run second inning off Walker Buehler, the Padres didn't score another run. And you look at the bullpen in game four and game five, they were just phenomenal. I mean, you can't say enough about this team. And Mookie Betts finally coming alive with a couple of home runs. It's great to see. And after that final out in game five, I couldn't believe it because I genuinely didn't think they were going to win this series, especially after that gut-wrenching game three loss.
I mean, yeah, you look at it, right? Game four is really the biggest game of the season for the Dodgers because it comes down you're doing a bullpen day with your season on the line. It's 2-1. The Padres have all the momentum. You're in Petco Park, and it just seems like this is like the same old script going over again. But that first inning home run for Mookie Betts, I really think loosened the Dodgers up and it
Mhm.
gave them an opportunity to really put their stamp on the game. Because you had it where you have Ryan Brazier, Michael or Anthony Bonda, Michael Kopech, Alex Vesia, Evan Phillips. You had no one went 2 innings total.
Mm.
It was just a complete organized effort by the Dodgers bullpen to we just got to get through this game. We need to get as many outs. No one pitched more than 30 pitches. The most was Vesia,
Mhm.
who's now out with an injury. But it's it was an insanely huge game for the Dodgers that they needed to win. The Padres wanted to go with Cease on short rest, and it really screwed them over in the long
I,
run. Where it That's where we talked about the Musgrove injury, where it would have been Joe Musgrove
Musgrove. Yeah.
starting that game four, and they didn't trust Martin Perez in a game four, like to close it up. So they said, screw it, we'll go with Cease on short rest. But if Musgrove doesn't get hurt against the Braves, that's Musgrove starting. It's a lot different. But yeah,
Yeah,
there's an insane concerted effort by the Dodgers bullpen.
yeah, I mean, if the Dodgers aren't up 3-0 at the end of the second inning, that really switches up maybe how the pressure is on because now every situation is high leverage. But I still don't understand Mike Shilt's decision to not pitch Martin Perez. I get he doesn't have the numbers, and I mean, let's be honest, his last start of the year against the Arizona Diamondbacks, he only went 3 and 2/3 innings, gave up eight hits, 6 runs allowed, but it's just Dylan Cease on 3 days. Like that almost just feels like an insult to Martin Perez. And like again, I know he's not one of the best pitchers in baseball, but you're telling me he couldn't give you at least 2 to 3 innings? Like that's like this innings that Cease pitched. I don't understand why Martin Perez couldn't have been in that situation because Dylan Cease was even roughed up in game one. or yeah, game one. It's like now you're gonna have him pitch game four. Like I think that was the biggest mistake because it gave the Dodgers all the momentum that they needed. And the only thing they wanted to do was we just got to get this back to LA for game five, which they ultimately did and ended up winning that game. But I just think going with Cease on such short rest, like, just did not make sense. And it clearly didn't work because he didn't even make it out of the second inning.
I mean, we look at it, right? We look at even just in the other series with we look at Cleveland and Detroit, where they went with Matthew Boyd to start the
Hmm.
game. To
Hmm.
you just go with and then you let your bullpen take over. I think if you let Cease have an extra day of rest or an extra 2 days of rest, you could have had him starting for game five. Or I guess you still would have wanted you Darvish to still
Darvish.
come in, but you still could have had that option where let's say if Darvish even went bad, you could have had Cease come out of the bullpen just to try and
Like
do
hammer it.
yeah, just try and shore things up. But instead you went with Dylan Cease on short rest. He obviously wasn't prepared, or not that he wasn't prepared, but obviously short rest is does a lot to a pitcher where
3 days is not a lot of time.
yeah, it's not a lot, especially being it wasn't a day game, it was a night game both
Hmm.
times. It's not like he had a day game and then he had a night game 3 days later where you get slightly more time off, but
Hmm.
it's still it does a lot to a pitcher, and the Dodgers took advantage of it, and that's really was the big difference in the series. And also the Padres offense just falling off a cliff for the last 24 innings
Yeah.
is another story
Yeah.
where even in game three, the fact that there was no more runs scored after the third inning total in game
Hmm.
three was like kind of like an omen of things to come, where kind of scary, kind of like okay, we really couldn't do anything to the rest of the Dodgers bullpen after that, like or Walker Bueller, like we could only
Yeah.
score off the in the first two innings, and that was
It,
it.
well, I mean, you even look at game five, like y- the Dodgers' plan, what from the sound of it was like if Yamamoto could go 3 innings, that's a blessing in disguise. The fact that he went 5 innings was such a huge W for the Dodgers. I don't think his leash is going to be that short against the Mets when he pitches, I'm assuming game three, just because his numbers against the Padres, we know that's his outlier. Like he only went 60 pitches against the Padres, but Dave Roberts just said, "Look, you did your job. We appreciate you. Go take a seat. We'll let the bullpen go." But I have a few words for the Padres because I'm so sick of people on Twitter. The Padres are the most cocky, arrogant team I have ever seen. Like, no one loves winning more than them, which is great. But when they are ahead and like Tatis sticking his tongue out and like showing his junk to the right field pavilion, it's like you're surprised a fan threw a baseball at you. Like, you can't play the victim and also be the villain. It pisses me off. Like that Jerickson Profar is like all crying to Mike Schill about to, need a diaper change, but then he's like also being cocky and arrogant towards the Dodgers. So the fact that after the Tatis home run in game two, in game three, when he pimped it, going 2 for 12 the rest of the way, it really put a smile on my face. But I just had to say that because you can't be cocky, you can't be sticking your tongue out, doing everything, and then when a fan gets upset, you're having a hissy fit. That's
I
my two
mean,
cents.
there was a big play in game five that could have been made by Tatis where it was what runners on first and
First and
second,
second.
3-1 count for Tatis, and he swings at a ball, grounds into a double play.
Hmm.
Like that could have been a huge momentum thing because the Dodgers had just hit a home run in the bottom of the second. If the Padres could have tied it back up with their star guy doing that, could have been huge.
Yeah.
Could but grounding into a double play in the most important situation of the series or in like the most pivotal game, it was something huge for the Dodgers to really get out of because I feel like if Yamamoto had given up something there, they would have taken him out right after that for Profar coming up.
Hmm.
But what an insane turn of events for these Dodgers where it looked bleak. And I don't know how you felt after game three,
Oh,
but I felt like it was bleak because the Padres had just come off pummeling you guys in game two to win in game five, win game three,
hmm.
where Walker Bueller, all things considered, didn't have a bad performance.
It was the defense that
Yeah,
really shot him.
yeah, it was that was the worst thing about it, where if you could get out of a start with Walker Buehler and it's only a one-run game, that's a W. And it
Yeah,
was a one-run game. You just
using the ch
no one could have scored anything after that. It was
yeah.
just what an insane turn of events.
Yeah, and I guess like before just to wrap it up, I mean, now you look at the Padres heading into next season and kind of similar to last year, Tanner Scott, a free agent, another left-handed reliever, is gone. Most likely, they'll
Yeah.
also, I mean, who knows with Kyle Higashioka, who was a really nice postseason ad. David Peralta somehow batted like 400 in the postseason. He's a free agent. Jurickson Profar was only making $1 million. He's going to have a big payday. I just don't know to what extent, and if it is with the San Diego Padres, Ha Kim is most likely gone as well. So this team is going to look slightly different, but a majority of their team will still remain. I'm just happy that they're gone because I can't. The icing on the cake was Tatis getting the final out of the game. Like, you couldn't have scripted it better. Like, are you kidding me? A ground out to end the game, send them home, and what was it? Chef's kiss. Can't stand the Padres.
But yeah, it's just an insane series. And I guess we could quickly go over the memorial for the Gritty Tigs.
Oh,
Just
may
an
you rest in.
insane run
Oh,
where 55 and what 63 at the trade deadline. They trade Jack Flaherty and they push the Cleveland Guardians, their own division rival, all the way to five. What an insane run for the Gritty Tigs. And I felt bad for them. Tariq Skubal had been good the entire postseason, and he just left a mistake over the heart of the plate, and Lane Thomas took advantage, and it was still a good game. Like
mhm.
the Tigers made it interesting, cut it to 5-3, but then gave up two runs where we talk about it, overusing that bullpen. It
Yeah.
just that's just what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, how about Parker Meadows? Like, have a freaking postseason. Had a hit in every single game. Also, Zach McKinstry stepping up as well. Justin Henry Malloy quietly had a 625 batting average and 8 at-bats. I mean, what? A rookie? Jake Rogers has the most gorgeous mustache. Like, that man is built for baseball. Kerry Carpenter, I felt bad for him because I mean he smoked that single. He just couldn't run
Yeah.
past first base. But look, you can never question the decisions of Tariq Skubal, who's unanimously going to win the Cy Young. However, I will say this: you knew Lane Thomas was swinging first pitch. Like
Hmm.
everyone, like he's been swinging first pitch the entire series. Obviously, it was a mistake to leave it over the meat of the zone, but why would you go fastball first pitch? That was my own, like, because I want to see the Tigers succeed. AJ Hinch is a phenomenal manager when he's not cheating, but that was my only criticism of Scooble. It's like that changeup is so nasty. You know, Lane Thomas is swinging first pitch. Why would, like, even the broadcaster, Brian Anderson, knew he was swinging first pitch. Why throw the fastball? I wanted to see the Tigers in the ALCS.
I guess we can transition over to the ALCS real quick. Although I wanted the Tigers to win, I really want the Yankees to lose. And I feel like the Guardians are the best team equipped to do that to beat the Yankees.
Yes.
I don't know if Skubal pitching game three would have been good enough
Hmm.
to have a real shot to beat the Yankees, but
Hmm.
you know, the Guardians have a real shot to beat the Yankees. And I think we talk about it, their starting rotation is mid. It's probably the worst starting rotation left in the postseason right now, where
Hmm.
Tanner Bybee, Matthew Boyd, like these aren't Alex Cobb. You don't really have like real, real postseason hitters compared to
Hmm.
going against Garrett Cole. But I still think that this Guardians bullpen, and they've really been taxed over this entire series.
Yeah.
The Guardians have pretty much used their bullpen for a majority of it. If it
Hmm.
wasn't for I think what was the longest that a starter went for Cleveland? Was it
It was
four and
Bybee. It was
it was
Bybee.
4 2/3.
Hmm.
4 2/3. Over relying on that bullpen to give you half of your outs is kind of kind of scary when you're going into a series against the Yankees where you have Judge and Soto, where if a starter gets shelled in the first couple innings, that could be something troubling.
Hmm. Yeah, and oh my God, to your point, like Bybee in 2 games has only pitched 8 and 2/3 innings, and he's averaging 70 pitches a start. Matthew Boyd is around 53 pitches a start, and Alex Cobb only went 41 pitches in his lone start. You can't have that be consistent. And that's also like when we talk about the NLCS preview, kind of a concern for the Dodgers and their lack of starting pitching. But Bybee is good enough to give you 5, 6 innings. And even in that first game against the Tigers, I don't get why they took him out. It was such a large lead. He was absolutely dealing. There was no need for any of your high-end relievers to even see the mound in that game. And I think Stephen Vogt's a first-year manager. I think he's just overthinking some of these decisions because as you now get into the ALCS where it's a best of 7, Tanner Bybee's going to have to go 5, 6 innings. It can't be 4 or 4 and 2/3. You're not going to win with Matthew Boyd only going 2 innings. I thought they pulled him way too early. I know he got into a little bit of trouble yesterday, but he still had 5 strikeouts in 2 innings. Like he's going to need to go 4 or 5 innings. I know he hasn't started a lot of games this year, but you got to have him go more. Like Alex Cobb is going to have to go more. They're going to have to do more. Like they can't win like this.
Yeah, it's a real you need to find a way to get your starters more length because it's not going to end up good if you're using your bullpen for half of the series or for half of the outs you need.
Hmm.
Like it's not a good formula for success. And we already seen it with Class A. Class A going for 2 out saves isn't gonna
2 inning
last.
saves.
Yeah, that's what I meant. 2 inning saves isn't gonna be sustainable where he'd only had one outing or one two inning save this entire season.
Yeah.
And now it's, hey, Class A, we need you to go out in the eighth inning and get all these runners out or get all these hitters out. Now, granted, it is the Tigers and it was
Hmm.
the bottom of their order going into the top of their order, but
Hmm.
like that's not going to work with the Yankees lineup. You're not going to be able to go from uh let's say Volpe and whoever to Judge and Soto and be like
Hmm.
and your arm's going to be fine. It's
Hmm.
not going to last throwing 30 pitches an outing.
You're absolutely right. And even like yesterday, you take Matthew Boyd out in his 0-0 game. I was just like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't understand what is going on. And against a Yankees team that it can get very hot at the plate, but on the flip side, the Guardians' offense is very, very streaky. I mean, they even had their own 20 inning scoreless drought where they just couldn't figure out the Tigers' bullpen of Tyler Holton. You also had Foley in there as well. Brisk. I guess you could throw Reese Olson in, but this Guardians team, like they're either really hot or they're really cold. Like there's no real middle ground. Like they're either going to score 5 or 7 runs like they did in the last 2 wins, or they're going to get shut out in back-to-back postseason games. And in a 7 game series, it's not sustainable what they're doing. And I think the Yankees are going to take advantage of that. And with the Yankees, like they have the pieces, and let's be honest, it's their easiest path to a World Series here. Like
Yeah.
they have Garrett Cole, they have Clark Schmidt. Rodon had the strikeout stuff, but he didn't look that great against the Royals. I don't understand why he was getting so fired up in the first inning. I think he wasted all of his energy in that first inning, but I think the Yankees can really attack this Guardians team to the point where the bullpen won't even really be in high leverage situations.
Yeah, and we look at it where the Yankees lineup is just it's stacked compared
Hmm.
to other teams. Like we look at it and see, you know, Aaron Judge, although he's having an atrocious postseason
Hmm.
and he's still that threat. Like no one is gonna look at Aaron Judge easier because he's only hitting less than 200 in the playoffs and Like nobody's gonna look at Aaron Judge and be like, oh, I can hang this slider over the middle of the plate. No
Yeah.
one's gonna do that. It's
No.
still just like an insane situation where he's still that threat,
Hmm.
and you still have Juan Soto ahead of him, and even Gleyber Torres has had some big moments in the postseason so far.
Hmm.
It's this lineup stacked top to bottom where we look at the Guardians rotate or the Guardians lineup right now, and it's like Bo Naylor and Austin Hedges aren't really giving you anything compared to Austin Wells right now.
Hmm.
Um, Jahenski Noel is like hasn't really done much in the
Hmm.
postseason. He had that one defensive play
That was a really nice play.
where he cut off what was it, Malloy from getting from first to second
Yeah.
on a that was a really nice defensive play. But like Jose Ramirez hasn't been playing good either in the postseason. And that's another like you're not gonna hang sliders over the middle of the plate for Jose,
Hmm.
but like Stephen Kwan, David Fry. The Guardians really have only four dangerous hitters right now.
Hmm.
You can kind of include Rocchio in that hit, but he's more of just like a singles hitter.
Yeah.
Um, but the Yankees just have so much talent, and it's an insane depth that I think the Guardians are going to have some struggle with. And that bullpen is really nasty, but I don't know if it'll end up propelling them to a win.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at when you look at the Yankees offense as a team, they 27 walks to 28 strikeouts. And oh, I mean, there were some times where they did get the benefit of the call against the Royals in that series where a lot of 50-50 pitches went their way. But you still look at it like Aaron Judge is batting 154. He batted 154 in that series, but he had a 389 on base percentage. Him and Soto 389. Giancarlo Stanton absolutely raked. I mean, he had 6 hits, three for extra bases. He batted 375 with an 1100 OPS. Soto's doing his thing as well. You look at Gleyber Torres even stepping up in situations. I just think this is too much. Like the Guardians, I thought obviously you had to respect the Tigers. I just thought the Guardians got too cute, and I don't think like if the Yankees go up, let's say, for example, 3-2 in a series, kind of similar to the Tigers going up 2-1, I just don't see the Yankees losing two in a row, similar to how the Tigers did. I just think there's too much veteran leadership on that team to let it happen. Whereas the Tigers are like a young team, house money. They don't really know the situation. The Yankees know the situation.
Yeah. And we look at going into game one, it's Rodon starting for the Yankees. And
Woof.
it's a rough it's an area where there is a chance that the Guardians could get to Rodon, like similar to how the Royals did.
Hmm.
Um, all it takes for Rodon is to have one like one,
Stinky.
yeah, one bad inning, and he's susceptible to doing that, where
Hmm.
he can just give up hit after hit after hit and then be left in a bad situation. Um, but what I think is the biggest thing for the or for the Guardians, you have to get something off Garrett Cole. The Royals were able to get something off Garrett Cole, but they weren't able to capitalize in game one. And that really screwed them over. If the Royals could have stole that first Garrett Cole game, it would have
Yeah.
been huge for them. But
Hmm.
they couldn't end up capitalizing. And we talked about this earlier that there were some bad calls that led the Yankees to getting that lead back,
Yeah.
including the Jazz Chisholm steal into second that should have been
Oh,
overturned, but it wasn't.
I
But
mean, even Austin Wells, like 3 pitches inside, the Royals didn't get one 50-50 pitch, and that led to another run scoring.
yeah, and the Guardians just if they want to have any chance to win the series, you gotta win game two. You gotta somehow get something off of
Hmm.
Garrett Cole. You can lose game one if it's close, but you you it's hard to it's easier said than done to get something off of Garrett Cole, but the Royals did it. The Royals were able to get stuff off of uh Garrett Cole in that first
Hmm.
game. You gotta find a way. Um, I guess moving on, we could talk about the last series, and there's only two series. Uh, the Mets and the Dodgers. Now,
Mm.
that is an interesting series where, coming into the game or coming into the series, Mookie Betts might be back. Like he might stuff that hasn't been seen since 2020. Like we got Bubble Mickey. Bubble Mookie.
Bubble Mookie.
Bubble Mookie, is he coming back? But the Mets are just an absolute wagon right now, and I don't know if anyone can stop them. Like they have everything clicking right now, and their stars are playing good. Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and that's a big thing for them. You got Kodai Senga. I don't know how many innings he's gonna go today. He only went what 2 innings the first game against the Phillies.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how long his length is for his leash for tonight is, but
Oh yeah,
gonna be
they
a good
play
matchup.
tonight.
Yeah.
Keep forgetting such quick turnaround. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you look at it through a lens cap. The Dodgers won the season series 4 games to 2, but then again, that was a very, very long time ago, and that really doesn't matter anymore. You look at this Mets team, I was doing my research. This team is just they're clutch. They're probably the most clutch team in the postseason. You look at it, 16 runs scored in the eighth inning or later this postseason, which is just ridiculous. They finished with the best record in the MLB. They had the best record in the MLB since June 1st. So it's like the Dodgers have to go from the best team since the All-Star break to now basically the best team statistically the entire year outside of a month and a half blunder when they were the third worst team in the National League. We look at the offense with Winker, Nimmo, Alvarez, Alonso, and then, the guy who's going to finish second place in the MVP voting, Francisco Lindor, who I love him. Like, I love him because if he hits a home run against the Dodgers, which he probably will because he's clutch, I don't hate it. He is the most composed. It's almost like he expects it to happen. Like when he hit that grand slam against the Phillies to eventually seal the deal, I like no emotion, more just like that's what I'm here to do. And then he'll celebrate after once the job is finished. And I that's what I absolutely respect out of Francisco Lindor. You talk about the starting pitching rotation, you can make an argument that it might be the best remaining uh, in the postseason. When you look at Senga, you look at Quintana, you look at Manaea. I mean, Sean Manaea is just disgusting. He is going to be paid handsomely. You look at Quintana and his changeup curveball mix, two lefties that can just absolutely shove. My only glimmer of hope when it comes to Sean Manaea and the Los Angeles Dodgers is statistically Sean Manaea has struggled against LA. I had his numbers. Work with me for 2 seconds here. He's 1-5 with a 7.09 ERA in 11 games against the Dodgers is Sean Manaea. That's the only thing they have going for them. Kodai Senga is also filthy with that ghost pitch. This is going to be a tough series for the Dodgers, but I think their depth offensively can counteract the pitching of the Mets. And although their bullpen of the Mets can be scary at times with guys like Ryan Stanek, David Peterson's been pitching out of the pen. You have Reed Garrett, and then you have the trumpet man. I just I don't know. I think the Dodgers face the best pitching in the NLDS. Not to disrespect the Mets, but I just think the bullpen of the Padres is substantially better than the bullpen of the Mets. Didn't really get to the Padres bullpen, but like I just think it's a kind of a little bit of a breather.
I mean, yeah, we look at it, right? Like the Mets bullpen, I mean, it's not a stretch to say that the Padres bullpen was like the best in baseball. Like
Hmm.
uh where you have that much depth and that much, length behind it and like people who can go uh like strike out anyone can hit the thing. But right now we look at the bullpen for the Mets and like you said, Edwin Diaz has been asked to do a lot recently. And we even see at the end of the game between the Phillies, he didn't want to celebrate because that's how he tore his patellar tendon last year in the World
Yeah.
Baseball Classic. But
Yeah.
we see guys like, like him at Reed Garrett, and there's still, you know, the starting rotation, you still have Peterson, Quintana, Manaya, Severino. Like you have still four guys who can
Yeah.
still go out there. And if you need length from anyone, Tyler McGill is that guy that's going to come out and give you bulk innings if you need
Hmm.
it. Um,
Forgot
but yeah,
those.
I think with this Mets team, they've just been insanely clutch. And
Hmm.
you bring it up where in those late innings, they just they had a graphic at the end of around game one where it was like between the Mets and the Phillies, where it was like it was still 1-0, still 1-0 Phillies, and they're like, yeah, the Mets have a 35% chance of still winning this game, and it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, but like the Mets just always get those string those clutch hits, and we see it where in that game against the Phillies, it was just
Yeah.
single, and they have guys that can just put bat to ball and get contact and have success with it, where it isn't even always just they're hitting home runs. And that's what you need in a postseason where you can't always expect to just hit home runs and that'll save you. Now, obviously, Lindor had the grand slam, but the people who got into position
Yeah.
for that grand slam
Hmm.
was what made it so huge. Because if
Hmm.
he hits that if he hits a single home run, it's just a 1-1 game, and you never know how the rest of that ends up.
Hmm.
But the Mets have a bunch of guys that can just put bat to ball and get on base.
Yeah, and look, you look at their success was jumping on the Phillies bullpen. The Phillies bullpen had an ERA above 11.
Yeah.
I just don't see how that happens against the Dodgers bullpen that has been, I mean, you can make an argument it's been spectacular throughout this entire postseason and even the regular season. They had a top five bullpen ERA in baseball. I like that's my only thing with the Mets is that they weren't able to jump on the starting pitching of either of the guys that the Phillies threw their way. And it was just as soon as guys like Strom came in and Estevez came in and Kerkering came in, that's when they really got it. I just don't know about that with them. And, we talk about even a guy like Mark Vientos, who has just been phenomenal, but this isn't just the postseason. He's been one of the most consistent hitters on the Mets outside of Francisco Lindor for a chunk of the year. And you just look at the Mets bullpen. I don't want to discredit them, but the Phillies were just god awful. They had been
Yeah.
mid the entire second half of the regular season. They were just lucky enough that the Braves fell off and the Mets had dug such a deep hole that they couldn't get out of it to potentially even make the division close. You just look at the Phillies team batting average was 189. A lot of that
Hmm.
has to do with the spectacular pitching of the Mets. I think a lot of it also just has to do with how god awful the Phillies were, and they just made life easier on the Mets. But then again, the Mets pitching is also great. I'm going to move over to my side, to the Viva Los Doyers side. You look at the Dodgers, they'll go with Jack Flaherty tonight for game one, and then you go Bueller game two, but offensively, this team, both the Hernandez, I'm gonna call them the Hernandez brothers, both batting 333 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Teoscar has been phenomenal. Kike has I found they were showing this stat during the game because he hit the solo home run. The fewest at bats per home run. Kike Hernandez all time in postseason history is ranked fifth. He's only behind Mickey Mantle, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, and Nelson Cruz. He is October. He is built for the brightest stage. And obviously, you don't know what's going on with Freddie Freeman. Otani kind of sucked in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie, but at least he was good with runners. He was 0 for 12 with nobody on, but 4 for 6 with runners in scoring position. So I'll take it. I just think the Padres played phenomenal matchups against him with guys like Tanner Scott, Hugh Darvish, who absolutely owned him. They saw him in 2 games. He really only had success off Dylan Cease, which is ironic. Will Smith finally came alive. Max Muncy finally came alive towards the back end of it. But you just look at them. I think their bullpen is also like these bullpen games. I got like I got to see how they play this out. like I don't know if you start with an opener and then you go to Landon Knack, but I understand why you didn't pitch Landon Knack in the game five bullpen. I'm sorry, in the game four bullpen game because you needed to absolutely win that game. But when you look at game three being a bullpen game, like Landon Knack has to be a bulk innings guy because in a 7 game series, I don't think you could throw 8 relievers in there and be confident. It works in a 5 game. I just don't see it working in a 7 game series, but I just still think this team, I think the Dodgers just getting over the hump of finally winning the division series against a division rival. I think that now, like, some headspace is finally cleared. Obviously, this team's a lot different each and every year, but a majority of the core is still on this team. And like they always say, you just got to see one go in. You just got to see one series win for the confidence to go. And I
Yeah.
have faith in Jack Flaherty, and finally Yamamoto doesn't have to face the Padres. So all hope is rejoiced. But I think you'll start seeing Flaherty get more innings. He 5 2/3 in game two. I think Yamamoto will finally go maybe 5 6 innings because they're going to need that now in 7 game series.
The last yeah, in the last batter that Flaherty faced, he told Machado to sit the F down.
Oh,
Um
oh.
but yeah, game one, huge series or huge first game. Like
Mhm.
Kodai Senga versus Jack Flaherty, and that is the biggest question. Like the Mets have a really good starting rotation, but how long is Senga gonna pitch? Like we really don't know how long he's gonna be out there. And it might just be easy to say, well, he said he can go 200 pitches, and he said that for
Yeah.
game one, but I don't know how comfortable the Mets really are with that. If they can get him to go, like, similar how you said earlier, with if they could have got Yamamoto to go 3 innings, it would have been helpful. It would have been more than what they asked for. If Senga can go 3 innings, I feel like that's perfectly what the Mets want right now.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't follow the Mets religiously enough to know what their plan is, but I still think the leash on Senga has to be between 2 or 3 innings, or he could also just be on a pitch count.
Yeah.
For all we know, like then again, like he only threw 31 pitches in that game that the Mets ended up winning, but it was because prior to that he hadn't pitched in over, 2 months. So I still don't think the ramp up, and then again, now it's also been 8 days between starts. So they're definitely mapping things out, but I still wouldn't think you all of a sudden go from him throwing 2 innings to now going 4 innings. Like it might just be that instead of going 2 innings, he gets 3 innings. I mean, that's what the Dodgers did in the ramp up of Yamamoto, where although he looked really good in his first start, it still wasn't like, okay, now that he threw 50 pitches, we're going to go to 80 pitches. Like it's going to take time with Senga. I would see, if they could get 3 solid innings out of Kodai Senga, I think that would be a win for the Mets, but I just don't see them pushing the envelope that much more.
All right, before we wrap this up, I want to get quick series predictions. I know you probably have the Dodgers winning the Mets series, but I want to get what's your prediction for the Yankees Guardians series?
I'm gonna go I'm gonna go Yankees in 6, and I'm gonna go Dodgers in 7.
Okay. Because I have Dodgers in five.
Oh, fuck off.
I have Dodgers in five and
Oh God.
Yankees in five. I
Yankees
have
in
I have Yankees in five. I think the Guardians overran their bullpen. I think
But I gotta
it's
hear your Dodgers in 5. Like I was
I'm
thinking
thinking
Dodgers in 6 or 7. Dodgers
I-
in 5.
I'm thinking the Miracle Mets are just gonna have their their magic run out. As much as I want the Mets to win the series, and as easy as it would have been for me to say Mets in four or Mets in six, I still think that the Mets are gonna have that magic run out. And I think, unfortunately, I think there is gonna be a way for the Dodgers just to be too much for them. Like their lineup is just too much. Where you have Will Smith and Teoscar and Kike and everyone in that lineup clicking. Besides really Otani and Freddie Freeman right now, but Freddie Freeman due to injury. Uh,
Yeah.
but I still think there's a way just for the Dodgers just to wrap this up quickly, just with
Yeah.
their bullpen and everything they have going right now.
Yeah, and I mean we brought it up for a quick second, but obviously no Alex Vesia for
Yeah,
the Dodgers. And my just quick thought, it would scare me more if Vesia was hurt in the Padres series, just given the power of lefties and the amount of lefties the Padres have. The Mets only have two left-handed bats. I don't really care that Alex, I mean, obviously I hope he's okay, but when you already have Anthony Banda and only two lefties for the Mets, how much would Vesia be used? Because Mark Vientos rakes against lefties, Pete Alonso rakes against lefties. Lindor's a switch hitter, so it doesn't even really
matter.
matter. The only lefties that they have on the team, if I'm not mistaken, are Brandon Nimmo and Jesse Winker. So like situationally, I don't really care. Michael Kopech, you still have Kopech, you still have Trinan. Oh,
Yeah,
Kopech. Where would the I forgot to even say because we quickly Andrew Friedman, Kopech for Miguel Vargas, and then you also get Tommy Edman to play exceptional shortstop. Like I could kiss Freeman on the mouth. Like I need an extension for Kopech and Teoscar, but use the bullpen. Kopech, Bonda, Trinan, Hudson, Brazier, Phillips, like they're good enough where I think they could still be successful. The Mets, like the Miracle Mets, but I guess you're saying that the miracle is
the
going
magic's running
to
out.
the magic is running out. I guess the only concern would be that they haven't really jumped on teams early. And I think that if the Dodgers are able to score a few runs, the bullpen can then just slap you in the face.
Yeah, like it's just so weird that the Mets can't really hit starting pitching. And it's they really take advantage of the bullpen, but I think the Dodgers bullpen is going to be too much for them.
Yeah, I mean,
Where
you even look at the Brewers series with the Mets.
yeah, I think it's just going to be too much for them. Unfortunately, as much as I want the Mets to win, I think it's going to be a Yankees Dodgers World Series, and
Oh,
everyone's gonna be like, everyone in the mid and in the middle of the United States and everyone in Canada is gonna hate it because nobody in Canada likes the Yankees and nobody in Canada likes the Dodgers after Otani screwing them over. It's really like,
so are you even gonna watch?
oh, I'm gonna hate watch it. I'm gonna hope it goes to seven and it's just like a barn burner in the World Series where it's like everyone's like it's just awful baseball being played. Like,
Yeah. I
but
I either want Yankees and Dodgers or Yankees and Mets because I just want to see World War III happen in Queens and Brooklyn.
yeah,
I'd just love to see that.
I just feel so bad because like no one wants the Guardians in the World Series. Like
Dude,
if
I
you
love Stephen Vogt, but like respectfully, I don't want to see a bullpen game every day.
I would have rather have seen the Tigers because it would have been funny. It would have been like
Oh,
shades of 2007, like how the Rockies made it there, where the
yeah.
Rockies had to win 21 of 23 games just to get into the playoffs, and then to make it all the way to the World Series. It would have been so funny to have the Tigers in there, like Tariq Skubal with like half an arm because he's
Oh.
carrying this team.
He's like CC Sabathia when Sabathia was on the Brewers pitching like
Yeah,
3 games in like 7 days to get the team to the playoffs.
yeah,
And then they end up with I think like now that we're like just doing like the fireside chats, I just like I think what would have pained Dodger fans even more was like if the Padres had won the series, they knew that everyone knew they were going to win the World Series because they just knew that like they were better than any other team left. Like I like that the NLDS should be 7 games, but I'm happy it wasn't. This year
yeah.
I'm happy it wasn't because I don't think I would have been able to make it or the Dodgers would have been able to make it, but I just like that might be the best series that we see in the playoffs, including what might be to come of the CS and the World Series. Like just having that should have been the NLCS to go to the World Series.
How long do you think until baseball looks at it and says we should extend the NLDS?
I don't know because I've never understood why the NLDS is
Is five?
like I've never understood that. I think they were more just like yeah, I don't really get it. Maybe it's just because they're already playing so many games during the regular season.
But I feel like, and I know this year three out of the four teams with a bye made it to the NLCS. The
Yeah,
only team that didn't was the Phillies. But what I'm saying is like I think a 7 game series, it happened in the past where teams that had the bye couldn't make it because
Yeah,
they get such a big time off. I think having a 7 game series would be better for those teams that have a bye because
yeah,
you can drop 2 games early and not have to worry about, okay, our season's on the line. Like
yeah.
you'd have more of a chance to ramp up into it because to really get into that groove again of playing baseball every day.
Well, also, I mean, like the Dodgers are the first NL team to make it past the bye, and everyone's like, well, obviously the bye has been isn't in effect because of the American League teams always making it. Let's be honest, the National League is a lot tougher than the American League.
Of course.
Like this is a joke between the two teams. Like the fact that and no disrespect to the Kansas City Royals, they're not a good team. Like their offense relies on Vinny Pasquantino, Bobby Witt Jr., and Salvador Perez, and then you can mix in some Michael Garcia, Massey, whatever. The fact that like the Dodgers have a first round bye, and then yeah, your next opponent is the hottest team since the All-Star break.
Yeah.
What? Like that's your reward? And even to a certain extent for the Phillies, like you finish as the second best team in the National League. Your reward is is the second or like the fourth hottest team in baseball. Like that's your reward? Like I think it needs to be 7 games because to your point, let's say, the Dodgers go down 2-1, you're not freaking out because it's like, all right, just win game 4 and we're back on even playing field. Or, let's say, like there's not as much pressure because even if you go down 3-1, you're not necessarily done.
Yeah. It's there's a lot more chance to come back from 3-1 just because of how baseball is where like it's done a lot more often compared to like other sports.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I think there will be a world where baseball looks at it and says, let's extend the DS by a couple games.
Yeah.
Like
Let's just make them all 7.
make it a 7 game series just so it's constant like there's continuity between series. Uh and you get better, I don't know. I think it would be
I think
a
there's better
cooler.
viewership just because more games and everything, but I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Anyways, that'll just about do it for this episode of Breaking News Bears. I once again want to thank my co-host Evan Davis. And I once again want to thank you guys, the listeners, for listening to another episode of Breaking News Bears. We'll come back in another week and we'll probably be only like halfway through the championship series, but maybe we'll give a prediction from that standpoint. Anyways, we'll see you all next time on Breaking News Bears.